been a little while since I've made an update on the Riley. I've actually been waiting for parts to arrive. So this is my radiator I had made, radiator core. So you might remember I'd made up a fake steel shell for now, and I designed the biggest core, modern style core I could fit to go inside there. I drew all of that up in CAD, and I sent the drawings off to a radiator making company, and they made me this, which is a modern style aluminium radiator. So it's very light. It's basically made exactly how I specified it, and this should work well. So the ports on it, obviously you've got the filler at the top. That was the smallest one I could get, which will actually fit inside the Riley one on the outside of the shell. So you'll be able to take the radiator cap off and then get to this one. I will put a little vent in the cap because this isn't pressurized, of course. We've got this is the water inlet, so this comes from the top of the engine. Obviously the engine heats the water rises up in the engine, comes into the top of the radiator, and then cools down with the airflow, and then sinks, and then comes back out of here, back into the bottom of the engine. I've got an extra port up the top here, which is for a temperature sensor. That's a screw-in one. I've got a mechanical one. It's actually off a Komatsu tractor or digger or something like that. It's all purely mechanical, which is good. It means I don't have to do any wiring or anything, and it looks more or less the part, but obviously I can change the face of the gauge later on, make it look more vintage, put a replica style face on it. I also had them put in this extra little 19mm port, and the reason for this is I'm not sure if I'm going to need a water pump or not with this radiator. I don't know if this is going to be enough to cool the engine. Some people think I should be fine. Other people say, no, you'll need a pump. I really don't know, and I won't know until I can actually run the car. So the plan is to initially have this blocked off. There'll just be a little piece of tube and a little blanking thing, or even a tap so I can drain it. And I'm just going to try and see if it works with the thermosiphon, the normal thermosiphon from the engine. If that doesn't work, I have got a little booster pump, and I think what I would do then is block off this side and have the pump on here, circulating the water through the engine. The reason I had both of them here is just to give me the maximum amount of flexibility, and I can block off whichever one I don't need. Hopefully it'll work without needing the pump. That would be ideal. I'm still trying to get hold of one of the proper Brooklands pumps, but again, it's a special casting, and there's probably one person who's making them, and they're not making any at the moment, so you just can't get them. After this arrived, I've been looking this morning at how I'm actually going to mount it into the shell. So I've got my fake mesh just to go in the front. That's curved, so it actually follows the curve of the shell. And what I'm thinking is there'll be a bracket at the bottom, sort of piece on here, as a flat shelf, and there'll be some rubber padding, and the radiator will sit on that, and there'll be a little plate that screws on the back to hold the bottom off it. And I think I'll have similar in the top. There'll be a bar, or a bar's probably not the right word. It'll be sheet steel, but it'll be folded so it's stiff enough, and that'll go across, and there'll be a similar thing to hold the top of the radiator. So there'll be an external piece you put on from the back, which will bolt on, and that'll sort of clamp it all in place. That should be enough to hold it all in place. While I was doing that, I discovered something. So the shell fits in there beautifully. I had to cut the hole in the top. This is just rough at the moment because I still need to get the pipe or a piece of tube that I can then machine the thread on to take the actual radiator cap, and then I'll soft solder all of that in place, or rather silver solder all of that in place. I needed to cut the hole because the actual core, I sized it so it would only just fit inside there. So you have to be able to poke this up through the hole in order to get this into the shell to maximize the amount of space I had. And what I discovered is my shell wasn't actually very symmetrical. I know it's not perfectly symmetrical on that little beak part. If you look at it right from the front and look very closely, you can see it's not exactly right. But what I found was this corner was actually about 1/2 inch too high. I don't know how I managed to do that. I was just trying to get the shape of something like this where it's curved in all directions and get it even was really difficult. So that's why this looks a bit of a mess at the moment. What I've ended up doing is I had to cut these so I could fold them back out of the way because they've been shrunk. And I effectively ended up taking a little pie wedge out of here so I could bring the top down and the side in a little bit. And I'm still fiddling with this. I'm still adjusting it. I needed to take out, I think the wedge was about 1/8 of an inch thick at this point, tapering down. I used a little cutting slotting disc on a Dremel and my snips and things, so that I can bring this down and get the shape correct, get it symmetrical. I actually made a cardboard template, so I've matched it to the template now. And then I'm going to have to weld this up and then refinish it all, of course, and then fold the flange down again and re-weld that. So hopefully that makes it a little bit better. It's not perfect. The shape of it isn't perfect, but when you look at the original ones, they aren't perfect either. They're not 100% symmetrical. So they were probably all handmade as well. So I'm going to fix this up and see how we get on with that. I haven't been idle while I've been waiting for the radiator. So I've actually started learning how to do the more form-based CAD that I needed to do to actually design the body. I think I've spent about the last 2 weeks doing that. An awful lot to learn. I've done a lot of parametric modeling, sort of solid body modeling, but this sort of forms type modeling is a bit harder. It gives you a much more organic result. And it was a whole new thing to learn. So I found some very good tutorial videos online. The chap who does those really explains everything really well, and he's great at answering questions. He even did a specific example for one of the problems I was having to show how to do it. So without his help, I wouldn't have been able to get as far as I did. So I'll have a look at that when I go back inside. But for now, I'm going to finish trying to get the shell even again and weld it up, and then all finished again, and I can look at how I'm going to make these mounting brackets on the inside. As I mentioned in the shed before, I have spent the last couple of weeks waiting for the radiator to turn up, and because that's taken a while, I've spent the rest of the time learning how to do the modeling of the body in Fusion 360. So I've used Fusion 360 a lot in the past. Obviously I designed my Enigma machine with it. I've also done simple modeling, simple sort of 3D modeling, where effectively you take a design such as my radiator here. What you do is you draw what's called a sketch. So you lay out the lines, you draw the plan from different views, and then you use that sketch to extrude the parts. So you can click on things and pull them up or down, move them around, put bevels on them, things like that. So this is really good for doing parts that are don't have a lot of curves on them. You can do curves, obviously, so you know, if you pull up a circle like this, you're going to get a curve around the outside. But doing compound curves like this is very difficult. And I've done a lot of modeling like this before, but I've never done the sort of forms modeling. And I started looking around for some tutorials or some help on how to do that. And I found a few films on YouTube to watch. And then I came across a channel called Learn Everything About Design. I'll put a link to it because it is excellent. The guy there, his name is Matt, I believe. He goes through all sorts of things in Fusion 360, including how to design cars. He records sort of tutorial videos, and he's got an awful lot of films up there. And you can sort of see as he goes through them, he comes up with better ways to explain things. So he'll do another series of films to explain different aspects of things. And so by watching a lot of his films, I've learnt exactly how to do this form modeling, as it's called. He's also, his channel's quite small, so he's also really good at answering comments, and he's even actually did a special little film to answer a question that I had in particular, which was really cool, really useful. But I'm not going to go through exactly how all of this works because it is really complicated. Effectively, what you end up doing is you find some blueprints of the car, and you load those into the program, and you set them up as top, side, front, and back views. And what you end up doing is similar to the sketching in the normal modeling. You effectively do a sketch, but you're doing it in 3D. You're creating what's called a form. And if we go to where my form is, this thing along the bottom is called your timeline. This shows everything you've done in this model, but this is the basic form. And what you end up doing is, we can turn off most of these things. If you look at the body, you can see, this is looking at it from the side, you can kind of draw out the shape of the body. And what you actually end up doing is you draw it out in 2 dimensions, and then you can sort of rotate it around, and you can start moving these shapes around in 3 dimensions. And I'm not going to go into exactly how it all works, but you draw out these shapes, and then the program automatically applies smoothing to them. So if we change the display there, you can see the shape that I'd drawn out with these different panels. It's now smoothed them off. You can rotate this around, you can grab points on it and modify them, move them around in 3 dimensions. I've got this mirrored, which is why it's got that green line there. It's showing the mirroring line. You can grab points. Like I say, you move them around, you can change the shape. You can do all sorts of really cool stuff with this. So I started off with this blueprint, which is available online. It's actually a blueprint from a toy maker, I believe. I think that's the original source. This one's been floating around all over the place. You see it in multiple places, but I believe the original source was for a toy car. So it's pretty accurate, but it's not 100% correct. I also happen to have the plans that were made of 8075, which is the car that I'm effectively copying. But that car didn't have, or rather these plans were drawn up for a doorless body. The original car had doors, and I've got the original door skin. But these plans are without a door, so this was for a different body. But that also gives you a lot of the dimensions. I've also had copies of, or pictures of frames sent to me that I can look at. And I also have another sketch that was sent to me by a friend that has some measurements on it. None of these sources match up. They're all completely different. The general dimensions are the same, but I've had to piece together my own measurements for everything. And basically I've based it all off the chassis I actually physically have. So that was one of the first things I modeled, was the chassis, and you can sort of see that there if we turn the canvas off. Again, this is the display as it appears. The way the smoothing works is effectively each of these lines is a spline, which is kind of like it's controlling the curvature of the lines. Now, this is how it looks, and you actually end up editing it in this view, but when it actually renders it, it turns it into the smooth view. And what I've found is you get quite good at knowing what your movements in one view are going to do in the other view, and how it's all going to be affected. So like I say, I've been playing with this for several weeks now to try and get the hang of it and understand how it works. So I started with the chassis, and then I started modeling the actual body. I did model it with the cockpit cutout in it from the start, but for things like the doors and the boot lid, I did those a different way, where you sort of draw the outline and then you use that to cut the body that you've got. And that's how you can remove openings like the boot opening and the door openings. So that's basically what I've been playing with. I've also modeled up the other bits and pieces. They're very simplified, so things like the wheels are simplified, the radiator is simplified. The general dimensions are correct. I've got the front axle there. I have the springs on it. If we finish this, the springs and things like that, I actually modeled the old-fashioned way, or what I call the old-fashioned way, which is just the general draw it out and extrude it. But you can see that that gives you a reasonably accurate layout of the springs. The measurements are all correct. I've just noticed a wheel has moved, or something's moved there. It is very easy to get confused and end up breaking your model. You can see there I've accidentally broken something. So I'll have to go back in the timeline and figure out where that break happened and fix that. So put the springs on. And that's the good thing. So you save it constantly. You can see I'm up to version 98 because I've been saving it so often. And I can go back here in the timeline. You can actually move this around. You can see it was okay there. So some movement I made at some point has broken that. Yeah, it's that one there. So I can go in and I can edit this and change what I did. You can see what it was affecting. So I'll go back and fix that soon. And then actually I'll probably stop this and fix that, because otherwise it's going to upset what the next step is. But you've got all sorts of controls for changing the view. That takes away the lines. You can see that's like got the hidden lines there. This is just visible edges. You can turn off the edges so you can see the actual smooth shapes. Obviously you can rotate it around, look at the car. You can turn on and off or hide individual bits and pieces. So that's the boot lid there. You can sort of take that away, have a look. Something else has gone wrong there. It's kind of stitched. You can join pieces together, and I've obviously joined a couple of things together wrong. So I think this model has got a little bit confused because I have extra pieces here that shouldn't be there. So I may be having to go back quite a bit and figure out where I've actually messed it up. But the good thing is it's all saved, and you can go backwards and forwards, and you can tweak things as much as you want. So like we can turn off or move components so you can see what's going on there, which is pretty neat. And what I'm planning to do is I can now take cross sections off the body, and I know where the framing needs to go. So for example, there's a framing piece that goes along here, there's another piece along here, a couple in the tail. So I can take those cross sections, look at them end on, and then hopefully print them out and scale them, and I've got drawings I can use to actually lay out the body, the timber framing. So I'm going to stop and fix this, and then we'll have a look at what it looks like when it's all drawn nicely. Okay, I ended up fixing the mistake in my model. It was that movement I had done was to we move the timeline back to basically put the camber on the front wheels, and I had to select the tires and the hubs and brake drums in here. I just selected the wrong side, so that's all that was. Yeah, as I was saying, this lets you model the car very accurately, or accurately enough that I can use it to actually build the body. And the other cool thing is you can change the appearance of different parts of the car. So obviously I've got the bonnet here is just plain aluminium, but you could see what the car looks like if that's painted red. You can just change the colors of everything, which is quite cool. So the other neat thing you can do with this is kind of a scaled drawing. Like I was saying, you can rotate it around, you can see what it looks like. I haven't done any of the interior or anything like that. That actually worked out to be a good thing, because I'd designed the body, the curvature of the doors here. So this is based on what they call the barrel-shaped bodies. You can see it's very pregnant looking, very round. And I believe I've actually got a little bit too much curvature in there at the moment. So I'll need to adjust my model. And I drew the body first, then I cut out the doors. You can see the doors are actually not symmetrical. The driver's door is a lot longer than the passenger door. You can see that quite clearly here. And after doing the body, I started adding in a few of the other details. I added the tyres first because that sort of helps lay out the car. And I went ahead and actually put in simple axles and also the leaf springs. And it was after I did the leaf springs that I discovered the body is too curved, because if you look here, you can actually see the spring is hitting the body. You can see it. There's too much curvature at this point. So I'm going to need to flatten this out. This back edge of the door is actually fairly flat, looking at the door skin I've got. So I need to adjust the curvature in here. The cool thing is, with the CAD modeling like this, you can just go in and do that easily and it'll recalculate everything for you. So things like the springs and the axles and the actual positioning of everything are based on the actual rolling chassis I've got, so I know it's reasonably accurate. But this is kind of the general shape of the body I'm looking at. If you look at the original cars, again, you find no two of them are the same. They're all completely different. I've spoken to people who have built different versions of these cars, built replicas, built specials, who have measured up original ones, and they were saying there can be 6-inch difference in the chassis measurements. The bodies are all completely different. So really it's up to me to build something that looks right. And what right is kind of up to me, I think. So this is what I've got so far. I'm still tweaking it, trying to get the shape right, trying to get the tail right. One cool thing you can do is you can create nice pictures of these things, and you can drop them down into these sort of backgrounds. It just gives you a little bit more context of the car, I guess, what it'll look like from all different angles. You can see here I made the boot lid panel a slightly different shade of red, just so it kind of gets picked up. I've put in the door gaps and things like that. So yeah, this is basically where I'm at with the modeling. Like I say, this has taken several weeks of pretty intense studying and experimenting and playing with this to get this far. But I'm really pleased with how it's come out. I have no idea how you would actually model spoked wheels, individual spoked wheels. That's probably quite difficult. But I think this is good. And there's lots of really cool other things you can do in here. You can do analysis of the body to see what the curvature is like. So if we actually select the entire body, so you could do all sorts of neat stuff. So this is effectively showing me where the maximum areas of curvature are, and you can see it's on the tail there. You can do what's called a zebra analysis. So I can't even remember where the menu is. Up here. So again, you select the body, and what this one shows you is the transitions between the curves, and you can look at the pattern, and if the pattern moves cleanly over the body, you know that the shape of it is correct. So you can see there's a little bit of distortion just around the back of the doors and things like that, but overall the shape of it's very smooth, the lines are very even, so it kind of shows me that I have the curvature more or less correct. So yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff you can do with this software. And the good thing is for personal use, it's free. It is all cloud-based, of course, but no, it's really nice, and it lets you do some really nice things. So I'm going to fix the curvature of the body, I think, and then later on I will have to do the analysis, the sectional analysis, I guess. I haven't really played with this that much, but you can see you can definitely take sections off the body. I don't know if I can then capture those, but what I can actually do is I can draw the vertical slices off the framing timber I need and then project those through the body, and you can actually break it up into pieces like that. And that should then be able to give me the sections I need to make the frame at certain points. So like I say, it's a very, very cool tool. I'm still learning everything it can do. And there's lots and lots of information out there, but I really recommend that Learn Everything About Design YouTube channel. His stuff is excellent. I think he actually makes instructional videos and things as part of his work, so his videos are really well done as well and really explain things well. And I couldn't have got anywhere near this without the help that he gave through his channel and explaining things and showing how to do things. But it's quite neat being able to model it like this and see what it's actually going to come out like. I went and took some measurements from my actual chassis and compared that to my drawings and discovered the drawings were 1 inch too wide, and that's why I was having problems with the spring hitting. I've slightly tweaked the curvature on the body, and if we zoom in now you can see that that has clearance. It's not a lot of clearance, it's only about 1/4 of an inch, but that should be enough. I've actually seen pictures of cars where you can see where the body's actually rubbed against just on the edge of the spring shackle there. The other thing I did is added in the steering wheel, so that's in the correct position and the correct angle, so I could check that it actually does clear the body and the doors, so that nothing was hitting there. But I think that's starting to look pretty good now. You sort of get a good idea of what the shape of it is actually going to be. It still does have the curvature in the doors, and it is still nice and sleek, low down sort of car. So I'm pretty pleased with how that's coming out so far. The next job will be to actually get these different stations and transfer those somehow to full-size patterns. But I think that looks really nice.